So companies are beginning to report their quarterly earnings again, and today I wanted to highlight four stocks that I think are great buys ahead of their earnings report this upcoming week. And the first stock of that being Uber, which reports their quarterly earnings on Tuesday. And Uber is a stock that I've been following for a long time. I really do love the stock and love the company. But over the last 6 months, it hasn't really done much. It's been really kind of been hovering around this 90 to 100 level. But I think this earnings report could really be what kind of turns investors over and this thing break 100. And I really do like the valuation. It's around 16. Their revenues are very strong, just constantly increasing. Their net incomes are also very strong. They recently became profitable, which is really what you look at the 5-year chart, really rose this thing up from 20 to around 100 now. And I think we could see, a 10% to 15% jump this earnings report. Haven't really seen many jumps in previous earnings report, but I think this could be the one where you really see investors start to like what they see and realize that this is worth probably around $115 right now. And the second stock, a little more risky than Uber is. Uber's a very safe pick, is Vistra. And Vistra reports their earnings on Thursday. Same story with Vistra, is that they've had a very strong year so far. Look at the 5-year chart here. I kind of started making videos on it when it was around 130. And kind of just track this drop from 190 to 130 because of the tariffs, realizing that there was really nothing wrong with the company. And it has rose a very, very solid amount. It at one point hit $215, above $215 in September. But over the last month or so, it's kind of been struggling to rise above that 215 level. I think a big part of that is the valuation concerns that investors have. The price to earnings right now is around 30, which is a little high, I think, for an energy company. I think investors aren't fully appreciating that this is also really an AI company, because they build data centers that AI companies will be using, which a lot of other energy companies don't do. So I think investors are kind of struggling to justify that valuation, that heightened valuation. So I think this earnings could be really what tells investors that this is worth around that 215 level, which would be a big rise. You see from that 215 level, a 10% rise. So you definitely could see those rise back to all-time highs for Vistra. And again, their revenues also very strong. Their net income is a little shaky though. So I think that kind of looking for that continued profitability quarter over quarter could definitely help it get back to 215, but it definitely has a risk of maybe not rising or maybe dropping back down a little bit if investors don't like what they see. And even more risky than that is my next pick, Duolingo, which announces earnings on Wednesday. And Duolingo has been up and down this year. It started around the 300 levels, rose all the way up to 540, which is an 85% gain. But since then, it's dropped almost around 50% from highs down to where we are now, around 270. And a huge part of that, really the biggest reason, is that there was one kind of report that their monthly user growth was dropping, and it decreased slightly over a month period. But investors really, really didn't like that. They thought that meant that users were turning to AI instead of Duolingo to learn languages, which really would hurt Duolingo's business. So that really caused the drop from 540 to around 270. And the earnings reports in the past weren't enough to really boost it back up. But I think this could be one where you see it really start to rebound, which is, I really started looking at the stock around 300 and it went up to 340, but kind of just faded back down. But I think you could definitely see a rise back up to like the 300 to 340 levels, which would be, it would be a pretty big gain. It would be around a 10% gain and maybe even more. And in the long term, I definitely like this pick to rise back up to the 500 levels, because again, their revenues are very strong, around 40% increase year over year. They are profitable as well, which is what you love to see. So out of Duolingo, I expect big things as earnings, but it is definitely risky, because if investors continue to be scared by the fears that monthly users are dropping and that's causing revenues to maybe not increase as much, this could definitely drop a little bit. But has huge upside potential, in my opinion. And the last pick I have today is Kingstone. And this is a company that I've been following for a little while now. I'm not personally invested, but I'm following it because it is very small, and I think it has huge growth potential. I might potentially take a position in the future, but the market cap is a little too small for me right now. But I think for an earnings pick, this is definitely one that I think could hit really big. And really the story with Kingstone is, you look at the 5-year chart, they've had a huge turnaround business-wise. There at one point we're probably going to get delisted, but they rebounded all the way to highs around 20, above 20. but they've kind of struggled since they hit that 20 level. And that was an earnings date, May 8th. And after that earnings, really strong earnings, jumped up to 20. But I think investors really just took profits and never came back. And this has been struggling ever since. I think this earnings report could really help the stock. Their revenues and net income, their revenues are really exponentially growing, and they are profitable as well. As such a small company, that is really nice to see. They also pay dividend, only a 7 price earnings ratio. The story isn't are they doing well, it's when will investors start recognizing that and start putting their money into the stock. And an earnings report like this could definitely help that. And if the volume does increase, which is really what's needed for Kingstone, I think you could see this rise all the way to $20, which would be a big return, around 15 no, it would be around 40%. So this is definitely probably one of my biggest favorite picks for it to rise a ton this earnings. Not as much risk, I don't think it can drop too much more, but this is definitely one of my favorites to see it rise a huge percentage point after the earnings on Thursday. So let me know what you think about these 4 picks. I think these are all going to be great picks. Hopefully I go 4 for 4 here on all of them rising, but chances are probably not. Earnings are a little unpredictable, but I think in best case scenario, these could all rise pretty good amounts to where I think they deserve to be at this time period. So let me know what you think in the comments. And if you're liking the videos, please subscribe. And yeah, see you next week.